our County Fire Department, and we have analyst Umeza Ima from the auditor's office.
Correct.
The floor is yours, sir.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yep.
All right.
We can't see you though. Can you put your camera? No?
Yeah, it's on.
Okay. Maybe
Can
it's
you see me
just
now?
no. Can anybody else? Okay, go ahead. Must be a problem with your camera.
Oh. Good afternoon.
We can hear it. Good
The,
afternoon.
the proposed FY 2021 budget for the fire department totals 113.1 million. The general fund portion of the budget totals 109.7 million and increases by 2.4 million or 2.3%, due primarily to the increased personnel expenses and to provide a second set of turnout gear, offset by a decrease in motor fuel cost. The special fund portion of the budget totals 3.4 million and is essentially unchanged in total amount. This analysis identified two maximum potential operating budget reductions, totaling 11.8 million, which we identified as pandemic economic reductions. These reductions, beginning on page 5, relate to the new pandemic economy that we have entered. These explore how various actions might affect the department, and the purpose of presenting them is to give the fire chief an opportunity to discuss the operational impacts of large-scale funding changes so that the possible staffing and service level effects of loss of revenues can be understood by all. Other discussion issues follow in the budget package, beginning on page 7, which address the following: personnel, COVID-19 grant funding, volunteer fire companies, and a capital budget. At this time, I'd like to turn it over for discussion. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Are there any questions from the members for Umeza before we go to the chief? Okay, hearing none. Chief Ron, are you there?
Madam Chair and the council, I am here to discuss the budget for the fire department. The majority of the fire.
Is this your first budget, Chief?
Yes, it is. Sorry. Yes, ma'am, it is.
Okay.
So I apologize for the ringing of the telephone there. I got it turned off.
That's okay.
Obviously this is one heck of a budget kickoff. The budget that we did submit, ma'am, is really reflective mostly of salaries. There really is no fluff in this budget whatsoever. Just a request to fulfill contractual obligations and budgetary obligations. The fire department supports the county's efforts to deploy good fiscal practices and can identify with the impact that the COVID-19 crisis has made on the economy. However, we strongly disagree with the level of measures that are recommended due to the impact that it will have on the services to our citizens. The current department budget was submitted only with critical expenses identified, which were mostly salary related, as I just said. To make this cut of this magnitude will result in a reduction of service, which in turn will result in more loss of property to county residents. And this is evident by the uptick of fires recently since the COVID-19 crisis, and it will also result in further property loss for that as well. So I appeal to you to keep these cuts to a minimum, although we identify that we do have to make cuts, and so it will not impact service to our citizens.
Thank you. Are you finished?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you. Before we open it up for questions or comments, I would just like to inquire how all your folks are doing in the fire department in the middle of this pandemic.
Thank you, ma'am. Are doing quite well. I'm very proud of them. They are working so diligently and so hard to make sure our citizens are taken care of and make sure that they understand the crisis that we're in and how important it is to take care of themselves and to do all of the separation practices and the mask wearing practices, etc. So thank you for asking. They are doing very well, and I'm very, very proud of the efforts they're putting forth.
Do you know if, not COVID related, but if your calls are down for service for EMT?
So our overall medical calls are down slightly, but we have also taken an uptick in fire calls, which we're actually attributing that to a lot more people being home and a lot more cooking.
Yeah. No, that's funny. That's funny. And the reason I asked is I'm just wondering how apprehensive people are about going to the emergency room for fear of the COVID-19 and trying to stay away from the hospitals. It was with somebody yesterday, and that's why I was curious in the calls for service. Okay, well, thank you. So for the members, I'm sure everybody has a question or comment for the chief. Who would like to go first?
Madam Chair, I guess I'll go.
Okay, Councilman Cran.
Hi, Chief Rond.
Good afternoon, sir.
I first want to acknowledge you for the quick response that you and your department, whenever we've had an issue, you guys are right on it, very responsive, and have handled a few things in our district that were just handled very well and expediently, and we do appreciate that.
Thank you.
I have two questions. One is related to volunteer ambulance riders. I reached out to the administration probably, I don't know, a few weeks ago, and was informed that ambulance riders that are on volunteer companies, that they're going to receive what I believe to be is a temporary pay rate increase while we go through the pandemic. And I'm appreciative of that, and I'm glad that you all worked on it. I don't have all of the details yet, so I thought I might ask you about it. And this is kind of the equivalent to hazard pay that some of our other public safety officers are receiving as we go through the pandemic. So I just wanted to first acknowledge the work on it, and wanted to ask you about that pay rate increase, and again, and if you can confirm my assumption, it is temporary while we go through the pandemic.
It is an identified hazard pay for them while we go through the pandemic, and it is an additional, what it equates to is about an additional $2.50 an hour for them, which is about 50 cents above what the career staff is actually making for that. So we wanted to try to do a little bit more of an initiative for them, since they are doing volunteer service mostly, and wanted to make sure that we reflected those efforts towards hazard pay for them during the COVID crisis only. That was identified, and that was actually put through in the past hearing. Yes, sir. Okay.
Very good. Very good. And again, I appreciate everyone from the administration and from your agency. Appreciate the work on that. The other question I have is related to the Sparrows Point project. I see that $18 million has been put into your capital budget. And as I'm sure you're aware, we're looking at this budget maybe closely than we have in the 6 years that I've been on the council, just because of the times that we're in, and projected revenue shortfalls and everything that goes along with that. So can you advise us on the status of that project? I know you and I have had offline discussions about it throughout your tenure. So $18 million for design and construction. Would it be prudent to work on design as we're going through the process of the land donation from Trade Point Atlantic and that whole scenario? Would it be prudent to just cut out the construction part, knowing that the times we're in? And again, I guess it just goes to the basics of where we are on that that particular project and where we are with negotiations on the land donation.
Yes, sir. So we will have to work with OBF and property management with regards to how this can be done. I'm sure it can probably be done in increments to make it be dispersed over a certain amount of years. I am not familiar with the contractual obligation that we have with TPA, and if we have a deadline that is set forth on that, I would have to actually lean on Mr. Blades or property management on that, because I'm not familiar with that timeline frame. But we can always work with any effort that the county sees need to make sure that we meet whatever those obligations are and also provide the service which they are requiring.
Okay. I just,
Madam Chair, may I?
oh, go ahead, Mr. Blaze.
Councilman Crandall, how are you? The
Thank
18
you.
million is programmed in FY22. So making any adjustment right now would just really it would affect the referendum that's going to be out in the November election. The 18 million, adjusting that is not going to impact or provide any savings in the current fiscal year. I just wanted to point that out.
Okay, so the majority of the 18 million would be what, out of PAYGO?
It'll be bonds, and it'll be decided whether or not it's approved by the voters in November, and then you'll see it in the FY22 capital budget next year.
Okay, so
Currently,
this
it's
doesn't
programmed, and it does not affect
I'm sorry, Ed, I
FY21.
cut you off. Yeah, I'm sorry. The wonders of Zoom, we tend to talk over each other. I apologize.
Problem.
So that 18 million really does not affect the general fund bottom line.
Not right now, no.
All right, I'm clear. Chief, thanks again. Thanks, Ed, for that explanation. Madam Chair, I yield back to you.
Thank you, Councilman Crandall. Councilman Parks, I believe you were next.
Yes, I will echo everything that Councilman Crandall said. You have always been responsive to me, and I want to thank all of our first responders who are working so hard. So thank you very much, Chief Rund. I have three questions. First, the capital budget includes funding for a females locker room at the Fullerton Fire Station, and I know that Councilwoman Bevins and I both will benefit from that. How many fire stations still do not have locker rooms segregated by gender?
Sir, I believe we have 3 fire stations that are still outstanding in that regards.
Okay, do you know which ones?
I will have to get back with you on that. I don't have that list in front of me, sir.
That's all right. That's all right. Okay. The second question is applicable also to police and other public employees. So this is a 27-week year. So we're going to have a lot of retirements at the end of this year, probably. Any idea on how that's going to affect our workforce?
We do not have any anticipated increases in retirements as we look through and we did the analysis. It appears to us that increase will be in FY20 or in 2021, which will actually equate into FY22. Is that correct, Director Blades?
We did increase the turnover assumption based on an increased assumption of retirements, 27th pay in December. Can you chime in on that?
Sir, we were looking at it and we don't see a 27th pay in December.
There is a 27th pay. I believe it's either 5 years ago or 3 years ago that the drop would be based on. And that is what the information that I had received from retirement.
Okay. Okay. The final question is, we've got 8 days left, and then we have to be making our recommended cuts. To what extent are we talking to the labor unions collaboratively? And I just look at this clock ticking away, and I know they certainly have a lot of opinions about options, I'm sure. So I guess Mr. Blades, Chief Rund, whoever wants to answer that.
I will step in, sir.
Sure.
President Saviga just received the information at 1:30 this morning, just as I did. So we will be talking very soon with regard to that. We will be working very closely.
And then working with the council, correct?
Absolutely, sir. Absolutely.
Absolutely. Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councilman Marks.
Thank you.
Councilman Jones, I believe you were next.
Yes, Madam Chair, thank you so much. I had a comment. I heard my colleague, Councilman Marks said that the female locker rooms would be a benefit to you and he. I could see how it would benefit you. I'm not sure about he, but in any event.
They service both our districts.
Oh, okay, I understand now. I did have a question. Chief Rung, the budget that you submitted, are we still moving forward with the the 4 additional medic units, 2 on the east side and 2 on the west side?
That would be the goal, sir, but that's based on a reorganization, not a budget increase.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much. And as always, I certainly appreciate all the service you and the brave men and women of the fire department are performing out there. I did have another question. She catch me while I'm talking to ask me for fruit snacks. So I think she knows the answer is going to be yes. Doesn't matter how many she's had already. The answer is yes to get her out the room. What was I going to say? When I was at, I guess, the Liberty Road Volunteer Fire Company recently, we were there with the county executive doing a tour of the businesses throughout the district. One of the things that they had mentioned during that visit was a lack of turnout gear that they had. And since that time, I followed up, and they still said that they were waiting for the turnout gear. What is the status of getting some turnout gear for the Liberty Road Volunteer Fire Company?
Sir, anyone that has riding capabilities and has turnout gear or a PAT tag and a face piece should have applicable turnout gear. If they do not, they bring it to our attention and we make sure we address it right away. Are they talking about turnout gear that is beyond their 10-year shelf life, or are they talking about turnout gear just in general, or is it just PPE items?
I thought it was turnout gear. One of the things that they showed myself and the county executive when we were there, they showed a piece of turnout gear that I think it had something like, it had another company on it, and you can see where they ripped the labels off of that company, and you knew that it was like a hand-me-down situation.
Mhm.
Yes, sir. We have that all across the county. That is due to the fact that we do not have a large enough budget to be able to purchase brand new turnout gear for everything. As long as it's a serviceable item, we make sure that it is clean and it's serviceable and it is reacclimated to other departments if it can be utilized. So we're doing our best to be fiscally responsible with that. Therefore, it may not be reflective of a Liberty Road insignia on that turnout gear. It may just be a set of turnout gear with Baltimore County markings on it. Again, that is only because we're trying to be fiscally responsible in utilizing the turnout gear that is within the parameters of good use and not purchasing brand new turnout gear for every single member, which would be unbelievably expensive.
Okay, so we fit the employees or the volunteers or whoever that's going to wear this equipment. I remember getting like fitted and it was sort of almost custom.
Yes, sir, that is correct. Where you and I come from, we definitely come from places that custom fit our turnout gear. That is not the case here, sir.
Okay.
We do not have the budget to be able to uphold that, unfortunately. However, we do fit them as close as we can within the parameters that we have, and it's all safe.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Jones. Councilman Quirk, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. Sorry. Yes, I have a question. Thank you, Madam Chair. Chief Ron, can you give me an update on specifically Catonsville Fire Station? We know we have some issues there, but I'm curious to see where things are at. And we can go into more detail offline, but I just wanted to check in with that one.
Yes, sir, absolutely. I left you a voicemail trying to call you back the last time to let you know that I got your message and I was definitely looking forward to speaking to you about that. So Catonsville has been worked on very diligently to get them where they need to be, get the asbestos out from within their working environment, get the floors fixed so that they're not falling through, and get some secure areas placed around the outskirts of the fire station where there was water leaking in, which was degrading the flooring structure in the medic room. And there, I mean, it was spongy. You could actually almost put your foot through the floor, excuse me. So those things have been worked on very diligently, and we're very thankful to property management for assisting us with that. And we're also very thankful to the Office of Aging in letting us take over the senior center for quite a few weeks so that our firefighters could live there while they were still servicing the citizens in Catonsville. Where we are right now is they did a feasibility study on the building and have identified that it definitely needs to be replaced. So we are working closely with property management right now, just looking for property close in the proximity of the area, which would be acceptable to Catonsville, to look for a place that we would be able to build a fire station. Unfortunately, the current footage of that station area there does not allow for what would be needed for a current fire station to fit all the apparatus in there. We cannot fit it in there currently the way it is. We have a brush truck that cannot go in that station any longer. It has to. The medic units are very, very tight in there. It's not a safe space between each one of those units. So we're trying to find a feasible location for us to identify. With that being the case, if we do find one now, we'll probably easily, and Director Blades can probably speak better to this, 3 years out before we would build a fire station. But we're going to try to maintain that station for a safe working environment for those personnel. In the meantime, while we do that, while we explore our efforts in getting a better location for a better fire station. So I hope that helps you, sir.
I appreciate understanding the timeline. So at the quickest, I guess, turnaround would be not for at least 3 years, 4 years out.
Yes, sir.
Okay. And I appreciate the update, and thanks to council for that as well.
Thank you, sir.
Councilman Batoka, did you have any questions or comments for the chief?
Yes, I do. Thank you, Madam. So I have two comments, and both are related to turnout gear. One is I'm hearing the same thing that Councilman Jones is hearing at the Liberty Road Volunteer Fire Company, at volunteer fire companies throughout the second district, that there are issues related to turnout gear, that it's turnout gear that is deployed to the volunteer companies have some age to them. The volunteer companies actually then pay for the aged gear. And so it's a little troubling to me that's the situation. And then what I heard from our discussion this afternoon is where you come from in Howard County as a career firefighter, and Councilman Jones from Anne Arundel County, and there you're fitted for turnout gear. And here in Baltimore County, where we're larger and we should be more modern, that we do not treat our first responder, our firefighters, in the same way that smaller counties do. And to me, it sounds like you guys, Chief Ron, Councilman Jones, certainly, you know the profession much better than I do. You've lived it for many years. But just hearing this conversation, it appears to me that as it relates to turnout gear, that there's a systemic issue throughout the county for both our career firefighters and our volunteer firefighters in terms of how we provide the most basic equipment that a firefighter needs in the work that they do. And Chief Rund, I'd ask you to comment on that.
Yes, sir, absolutely. There is definite room for improvement here. However, with my safety background, I'm very diligent in looking at the safety aspects of this. And although it is used turnout gear and it's across the board, career and volunteer, our new firefighters coming in do not get brand new turnout gear. Our new firefighters coming in, even career-wise, get used turnout gear if we have turnout gear that fits them on the shelves. And it is due to the expense of turnout gear. Turnout gear is not cheap, sir. It is at least $3,500 a set, if not more. And when you look at the volume of firefighters that come in on the volunteer side as well as the career side here in the county, although I am not my favorable way of doing it, I understand it. And as long as it is safe and as long as we're not putting our personnel in risk, then unfortunately this is the times that we're in, sir.
But I would ask,
Madam Chair,
Yes, Ms. Rogers.
I'd like to add to this discussion, Councilmember Patoka. This is something that the county executive is keenly aware of. We learned of this last year. And if you look back at some of the work that we've done over the last year, working on the career side to address turnout gear, working with Chief Rund on that. This is something that we too take very seriously and were concerned about when we learned about this issue. And it's not something that we have not tried to work on in last year's budget and even in this year's budget, and working with the volunteer firefighters. So some jurisdictions have 2 sets of turnout gears, but again, it's about long-term investment. And this was an area that had not been invested in prior years. So I just wanted to note that if you look back at last year's messaging and this year's messaging.
I appreciate that, Ms. Rogers, and I didn't mean to suggest that this systemic issue occurred over the past year. I think systemic issues occur over many, many years. And Chief Rund, so in Howard County, a firefighter would get would be fitted and then get new turnout gear.
Yes, sir.
And Councilman Jones, I would ask, based on your experience in Anne Arundel County, was that the same, that a firefighter would get fitted new turnout gear?
Yes.
Thanks. Thank you. So it just seems to me that that's kind of a major league way of equipping your firefighters. And I feel like, similar to what we dealt with yesterday in code enforcement, that over many, many years, we haven't addressed a priority. So yesterday we talked about code enforcement, and the trajectory of our hiring of code enforcement inspectors was going in a different way than our population. And I would suggest today, now I'm learning that, we're all learning, that in other jurisdictions where equipping our firefighters with appropriate equipment as they go out, fight fires, first responders, it hasn't been a priority for us. If it was a priority, then we would be just like Howard County, and we would be just like Anne Arundel County, where we wouldn't be providing used equipment, we would be providing fitted and new equipment. I know this is a tough year to address that priority, but at some point, if it's a priority, the only way it's really a priority is if you put budget behind it. And we as a council and the executive as the chief administrator of the chief executive of this county, our policy will be determined by where we put budget. And so, we can say things that public safety is a priority, but unless we put budget behind it, it's just words and not policy. So I would just say that it's something that should be elevated similarly to code enforcement. And although, again, this is the toughest year to put budget behind anything. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Patoka. Councilman Catch, do you have questions or comments for the chief?
Yes, Chief Rund, I want to thank you and your department for the great job that they're doing. We all appreciate it so much. My question is, and I don't know if you'll know the answer, did the county at one time provide new turnout gear to our existing firefighters and the new recruits? And if so, do you know when the county stopped doing that?
I do not know that. I can certainly look for it and get it back to you.
Councilman Bevins and Marks and Quirk, do you recall when you were first elected whether or not that policy was changed under the Kamenetz administration?
I don't remember, but I can, and I think that if anybody else is on and can relate to this, I do know that actually I was the administrator over with the volunteers in 2009, and there was an audit done of the volunteers and their equipment, and I don't know how often that's done, but I remember that they found tons of turnout gear stockpiled in the different volunteer stations that, at the time the volunteers were asking for new turnout and they already had turnout that had been put away. I don't know if there's anybody in the budget office that can speak to that when that happened. So if it did happen, that could have been because of the result of that audit. I'm not sure, but I do know that there were many stations that were not using new turnout and were asking for more. Does that ring a bell with anybody? We're talking 2009.
So what you're saying is this was new, unused turnout gear that was found?
Yes, it was never used, and the volunteers were asking for more at the time on their list of things that they
had the volunteer fire company purchased this turnout gear themselves prior to the county?
Yes, they did.
Okay, so it was their turnout.
Yes, they were asking the county to purchase turnout gear that they already had.
No, but I mean, when you say they already had the county provided what was found?
I don't know what it was of who had what. I just remember the audit, and because it happened when I was over there.
So you think that might be?
I don't know, and I don't change anything. I really don't. I don't remember since we were elected any kind of policy change. Does anyone save it?
I don't remember either.
Yeah. So I guess we'll have to look into that. I guess my question would be, I'm sorry, I don't want to interrupt.
I'm fine. I'll finish. Thank you.
I guess my question would be whether it's to Chief Rund, whether it's new turnout or old turnout, does that affect the way, would that affect the way that any when fighting a fire or showing up for an emergency, does that affect the way that they would do their job in protecting the citizens?
No, ma'am, not unless it was not safe, serviceable turnout gear. That's why I had made the statement that although they may have older turnout gear, they do have safe, serviceable turnout gear. And if they don't, it's because we don't know about it. Because I need to emphasize my background is in safety, and I would be all over that, making sure that we got it swapped out for appropriate turnout gear. I also have to mention that not all the turnout gear is old and is used. There are new sets of turnout gear that come in, but when it comes to someone needing another turnout gear, if we have something that's already in stock, we do not order brand new turnout gear because we have something that fits them in stock. So I don't want it to be misunderstood that everything is old and everything is used. There is some new mixed in amongst that. It's just where a lot of, and we've been working so diligently with the administration on this, and I thank the county executive and his team for working so closely with us on this, because we have been trying to make sure that everyone has what they need and we have an appropriate inventory of everything and everything is where it needs to be. It's just not brand new, custom made turnout gear for every single individual person. I'm happy to tour with anyone who wants to walk through and look at the turnout gear in the fire stations, if that would help anybody feel better. If that's needed, be happy to do that.
No, my issue would only be with safety. Of course, it would be nice if we could provide that for every single person. But if we can't, as long as there's not a safety issue, I don't have an issue with it. Councilman Couch, were you finished?
I just have one more quick question. Chief Rund, did you and the county executive administration are looking into this issue? Do you think that in the future that you're going to have to replace a certain percent of the turnout gear 1 year and then another percent the next year? I guess what I'm asking is, what is the lifespan of the turnout gear?
So a maximum lifespan of turnout gear is 10 years. And we do already have that worked into our budget for replacement purposes. And we are working very diligently with the volunteer corporations to identify what their serviceability is and what gears need to be replaced on their turnout gear as well. That's kind of a difficult piece right now with their inventory, matching our inventory, making sure we have appropriate inventories laid out so that we can assure that we are budgeting properly and putting that through annually for funding.
So you have your inventory of, okay. And then I assume some of the volunteers have theirs and others are still working on.
So we're very close to some volunteer companies. We were almost finished when we submitted the budget this year, but they were not quite there yet. They were finishing that up.
Madam Chair, I have another question, if that's okay.
Sure.
Again, back to turnout gear and the lifespan of a turnout gear. Chief, would the lifespan of turnout gear be a variable depending on how many calls a particular firefighter is on?
No, sir. It's all safety factor. So it depends on how many exposures that material would have within the fire area, or the extent of damage that is done to that turnout gear whenever they do enter a fire. And every time a turnout gear piece has a compromise to it, it is supposed to be sent out for cleaning and inspection. And a third-party vendor takes a look at that piece and certifies it's safe for that firefighter to use. So it could be various different reasons, not necessarily just how many calls you run, because we run many, many calls, but not necessarily every one of those are extensive fires.
Gotcha. I mean, the example I'm thinking of is there's a volunteer at Pikesville, and he's been averaging on at around 1,200 calls a year. And so it seems to me that his turnout gear might have a little bit more wear and tear on it than somebody that, let's say, is on 100 calls. I mean, that's a very dramatic difference, and he's his 1,200 calls a year is really phenomenal. But that's what he's averaging, and I wonder if it's something that we can, if we're moving into a STAT program, if that's something, and maybe this is a question for Ms. Rogers, if that's something that could be put into the stat metrics.
Councilman Patelko, of course, we can add any metrics that we deem critical, and this one is critical, but I do want to emphasize that when this was brought to our attention, we worked closely with the department to try to look at a replacement cycle and fund for that, and then also look at what we could do for the volunteer stations as well. This has been a big topic in the last 2 budget years, but happy to take that metric back to the county stat team and look at that.
Thank you. That's all I have, Madam Chair.
Yeah, thank you, Councilman Matoka. I guess I'll add to this conversation. Chief, do you know the cost offhand of what we pay, what you pay the vendor who inspects the turnout gear yearly?
No, ma'am, I do not, but I can certainly get that back to you.
Okay, all right, I was just curious. Do you have an update for me on the Middle River Volunteer Fire Company? And, they've merged almost 2 years ago, and they would like to move. And as far as I know, they would like to go up to the aviation station property. Have you heard anything else about their merge and where they are with it?
We have not discussed that lately, madam, as we've been preparing for the budget and making sure that their budget was in for the entire county. But I can certainly get you an update on that and get back with you.
Okay, thank you. And one of the reasons that I'm asking is we've had an increase in development in the Middle River area, especially Greenlee. That is now going to hit 2,000 homes in total. And another 500 within the area. So I think if we're not adding another career fire station, we need to make sure that the careers have everything that they need to protect the citizens of Baltimore County. And I know they feel like with this move, it will get them to that area a lot quicker, and they'll be able to serve people faster, more efficiently. So that's the reason I was asking.
Yes, ma'am, I will look into that and get back with you.
Okay, does anybody else have any questions or comments for the chief? Well, Chief, I just want to say congratulations on your first year in, almost, and your first budget hearing, and you're doing a phenomenal job, and I want you to please give everyone working under you and with you our best, and make sure that they stay safe and that they're doing everything to protect themselves, and that you have all the protective gear that you need for them to do their job.
I have an update for you with regards to the average cost of cleaning and repair for a turnout gear, $185 per set.
Wow, okay. And you don't know, though, how many they inspect a year, just the cost of each?
We do not have that quickly offhand, but we will get that back for you.
Do you know the cost to purchase new turnout gear compared to the $185 to have it cleaned and inspected?
On average, roughly $3,500 a set.
Okay. Now I get what they're inspected.
Yeah, and we limit the repairs to 40% of the repair of the turnout gear. So when we to the capacity of it being 40% of being repaired, then we go for a new set of turnout gear, ma'am.
Okay. All righty. Well, thank you again. I know these are trying times. Give everybody our best from the county council, and you make us very proud, Chief.
Thank you, ma'am. Have a good day.
You too.
Thank you, Chief Ron.
Okay, council, we're just going to take a 3-minute break. We're still on this WebEx, so don't shut it down, and we're going to take a 3-minute break, and we'll be right back. Okay?
Precious.
Reggie.
Oh,
Reggie.
walk today?
He's not happy today because it's raining.
Ah,
He
just
got
like my dog, doesn't like the rain.
He got a short walk this morning right before it started, and he just doesn't want to go out. He doesn't like to pee in the rain in the yard. He's very sad today. See how serious he looks? So, and welcome back from your break. So now we're going to start with the budget summary, and we have Michelle Gagnon, who is going to present that.
Yes, hi, and thank you, Madam Chair. And as Lauren said, the capital budget package is divided into two sections, A and B. The proposed FY 2021 capital budget for consolidated public improvements totals $98 million. Two pie charts on page A1 show the breakout of the budget among the sources of funding and among the classifications. Debt premium at 38% supports the majority of the total CPI budget. The majority of the debt premium will fund various buildings, storm drains, community and neighborhood park development, and waterway improvement stormwater projects. General fund PAYGO at 25% represents the second largest source of funding, and reallocated general obligation bonds support another 1/4 of the budget. Funding for buildings projects accounts for over 1/3 of the total CPI project appropriations. Funding for school projects represents nearly 1/5 of the appropriations. Funding for waterway improvements and parks preservation and greenways represent another 1/4 of the appropriations. And the remaining 1/4 of the projects represent the countywide Economic Development Financing Fund, Windsor Mill Road Phase 1, the countywide agriculture preservation program, and various storm drains, bridges, refuse disposal, and community college projects. Pages A2 through A4 provide additional details on the projects that are funded in the FY 21 capital budget. Page A5 and page A6 summarize the total 6-year capital program for CPI projects and the funding sources. The program totals $1.3 billion and is over 3/4 funded by general obligation bonds, with more than half of the bonds earmarked for school projects. And school projects will be discussed in more detail at next week's school budget hearing. Pages A7 through A13 show county debt and county debt service. And the proposed FY 2021 budget for general fund debt service totals $217 million, and this is an increase of $15.7 million over the FY 20 appropriation. Beginning on page B1, section B, B1 of the analysis, we have identified several potential budget reductions to the proposed capital budget, including $500,000 to the county's tech fund, and additional potential reductions of up to nearly $30 million in pandemic economy cost containment reductions and strategies. Beginning on page B3, we have identified other issues that can be addressed. And at this time, I'm going to turn it over for discussion. Thank you.
Thank you. Do any of the members have any comments or questions?
Yeah, I have a question.
For the analyst.
The analyst, yes.
Go ahead, David.
Okay. I noticed that Pine Grove Middle seems to be broken out differently. In other words, why is Pine Grove Middle broken out like this when all the other projects associated with Build to Learn, such as Nottingham Middle and the other elementary schools, are not broken out like this? Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah, that was told, the budget office said that this is the completion of the county's share of the funding for Pine Grove Middle, and maybe Ed can speak more to that, but that it is the last of the funding from the county for Pine Grove.
And I understand, because we've supplied full funding for all of these Build to Learn projects, but why is Pine Grove Middle here when we don't see Nottingham Middle and other, projects that will be funded?
Councilman, I'll be happy to put that under question 6 if you're comfortable waiting until then.
That's fine. That's fine. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. Who wants to start with any questions, comments? I don't see any hands up.
Madam Chair, did you want me to run through some of these questions?
Would you, Mr. Blades? Thank you.
Sure. We have with us, I'm going to handle 1 through 7, and then we have Rob O'Connor here to talk about the tech fund and 311 for questions 8 and 9. And then we have Steve Walsh, Steve Lafferty, and Dave Likens available for question number 10.
Okay, thank you.
So for the first one is the cut that Michelle mentioned for $500,000 to the tech fund. If you don't mind, I'd like to put a pin in that until we talk about the tech fund with Rob O'Connor.
Okay.
Okay, and 2 is the pandemic economy. The $25 million reflects general funds that are in the FY21 budget. The second page for B2 lays out where those funds are currently budgeted, and we are currently reviewing all of those. So I'd just like to ask that you bear with us, and we'll come back to you with a recommendation, if possible, of how to possibly reduce that general fund contribution to offset the revenue losses. Question 3 is involving refinancing of outstanding a loan with the actually the County Police and Fire Widow Pension Fund. It's nice question, thinking outside the box. Our preliminary assessment is that the fund would need the county's FY21 payment in order to meet the benefits payments on or before June 30th, but we are going to go back and take a closer look at it and see if there's a possibility to modify the term. Question 4 goes into the COVID pandemic and capital programs. We do expect there may be possible delays in some of our projects as supply chains may be impacted by the virus. Whether or not this results in change orders is unknown, but we'll be closely monitoring all of our projects. We are also likely to have some slowdown as bidding of some jobs competes with COVID acquisitions, so there may be an impact there. And we are also discussing the use of the $144 million for some potential building retrofits so that we can make sure that when we do reopen, that our staff are safe and that the environment for our customers ensures social distancing. The important thing with that and the capital program is that any modifications that we do using that money will need to be spent by December 30th. So we have that is in the works. The second part of this question, the auditors ask about unspent general funds that are within the capital budget right now. Currently, there's roughly $77 million out there. $43 million of that is on a capital project. The remaining balance is on an existing active capital job. We are looking at that for possible opportunities to liquidate some of those general funds and drop it back into fund balance. But of that $43 million, we have $15.8 million of that is in school projects. Another $14.8 is in operational buildings, and the rest is spread throughout the capital budget. And some of those funds, we did make assumptions in using that to help with FY21 projects. So we have to take a closer look to see what opportunities we have to liquidate those funds to help offset revenue losses for FY20. So we are working on that. The next question, number 5, gets into the use of bond premium. And bond premium in this past bond sale, we raised roughly $64.2 million in bond premium. And under IRS regulations, we're allowed to use that premium for 2 things. We could use it to offset debt costs, or we can use it to like interest, or we can use it in our capital program. So you only get 2 years for interest, and you have to spend it within the capital program within 3 years. So with that, we have set aside, we've set aside for FY21 and 22 interest payments And then we have also taken 37.2 million and added that to the capital project or capital budget for various capital projects. As far as the amount of the premium, that is determined by bid parameters, by bidders' preference and interest rate at the time when we go out to sale of the bonds. But the use is also ideal since it's cash, and it helps us reduce the need to issue bonds to support capital projects in the future. So, Councilman Marks, here's your question number 6, getting into school facilities. I do expect they'll have similar issues with COVID, like we will as far as supply chain. And so to date, the Built to Learn Act, we know that it's reliant on casino revenue, and we know that the casinos are shuttered. So we don't know what the governor is going to do with the legislation. So we are all kind of at a standstill as far as what happens next, because we know that the remaining schools in our Schools for Our Future program are dependent on state funding. So as the school system has moved forward with getting closer and closer on all the schools with construction documents that they will go out to bid with, they have been adjusting their estimated costs. And when they submitted their request to me this year, they presented increased costs for many of the schools within the Schools for Our Future program. So with that in mind, it was a significant increase to cover that. I think off the hip, I'd have to look at it. It may have been between 50 and 60 million. Clearly, we didn't have that kind of general fund monies around to fix it in FY21. So we discussed the best way to proceed, and they came back with a request for a reallocation. And that's why you see we reallocated funds into Pine Grove to make up the funds needed for that school so we can move forward in FY2021 should we receive funding from the state. But in doing that reallocation, we had to push 3 schools into the FY22 referendum. Those schools are Scotts Branch, Deer Park, and Red House Run. Those 3 are now in the referendum for FY22. Lansdowne is not in, neither are the other high schools that are in the program, but we did have to make that shift in order to cover the county contribution for those capital projects. That's kind of where, sure.
Okay. This Nottingham Middle, where is that?
Currently funded. Currently funded in the capital budget itself. It is. We did not have to add. We were able to cover it. Nottingham Middle School and Pine Grove share the same capital project. So it's 2 school construction projects in 1 project. The project itself had enough money in it to take care of Nottingham and a portion of Pine Grove. So the 12 million that was added in FY21 with the reallocations covers the balance of funds needed for Pine Grove. So both schools will be funded with FY21's budget.
Okay. And one final thing, and I'm sorry for jumping in, but I'd rather do it now. Why is the cost of the schools going up? I mean, oil prices are down, so I would think the cost of steel and other commodities is going down. Why is the price going up?
I will say that we are experiencing that on our side as well, as labor costs are going up. And then there are a lot of projects that were underway, which are driving or makes it harder for construction companies to pick up the staff that they need, which also drives up their costs and drives up the salaries. But I will defer to the Board of Ed when they're before you for specific drivers on projects. But we have been talking as far as the way we proceed with the school construction. We will not bid all these projects at the same time. We will try to phase them out so that we don't saturate the market and drive up costs as we move forward. But again, that's all going to be dependent on the Built to Learn Act.
Excellent. Thank you.
Sure.
I just want to say, David, thank you for asking about the middle school. I appreciate it.
Okay, and Madam Chair, the number 7 is really more of a provided for reference for members of council. So if you don't mind, we can go to number 8 with Rob O'Connor.
Good afternoon, everyone. Madam Chair, members of the council, I hope everyone is doing well. I want to thank you for your quick adoption to and adapting to this new way of work. I've been watching Madam Chair run several of these meetings for the past 3 weeks, and may have a second career in IT after this. I just wanted to take a moment to, I do want to thank my team. The amount of work that IT has been under for the last 4 to 6 weeks since the pandemic started has been overwhelming, and they've truly risen to the challenge. Just some numbers for you. On March 16th, when we really started the stay-at-home order and the county executive's initiative to have social distancing here in the county, on that day we had 220 people working remotely. By April 1st, we had over 3,000 of our county employees working from home. So within 2 weeks, that was a huge increase, and we were prepared beyond other jurisdictions and organizations. I heard that over and over. We were able to step in and help our court system because the state was not prepared for them to be able to do virtual hearings, as you guys have been also availed to using WebEx for virtual hearings and virtual town halls and meetings. Through this, it has been truly the push to technology to make sure that the county itself is able to provide the services that are so desperately needed during this pandemic to our constituents. This was not a time where we could hang up the "Gone Fishing" sign because we were not able to be here on site on campus. We had to change our business processes and adapt quickly, and each agency has done so amazingly. A lot of this technology has been new to people, new to you, and I do want to thank everyone for their patience, but I also want to thank my team for working nights, weekends to quickly deliver. For the tech fund request for FY21, each of these projects that was requested, if any of these could be delayed or held, again, I think I kind of revert back to the technology needs today, and I see it growing even more so tomorrow. When this pandemic ends, I think that the way that we are doing business is going to greatly change for each and every one of us. These projects that are in the tech fund request are agency and countywide specific projects. These are not IT projects. They have an IT backbone to it, but these are county needs. The first major one, obviously, on this list is the Workday project, which is our new, it says HCM, Human Capital Management, but it's our HR and financial system that you approved back in December to move forward. This new system will replace our 20-year-old current ERP system, give us the ability for greater data analysis and for greater onboarding and human capital management for our employees and for our budget office to project funding for current and future years. New tax system is slated for FY21. Our tax system is still on the mainframe. We're trying to retire our mainframe. Our mainframe is costing the county $750,000 a year. This is one of the last remaining applications that has a part on the mainframe. As you know, obviously, the taxes are one of the greatest revenue sources for the county, and so this system is vital for the county's needs. Number 3, the countywide efficiency assessment. I'm going to hold that for now because I have to defer to Mr. Blades or Ms. Rogers for that one. That's not a specific IT project. The PAI, development management implementation, the land management. Our process that is utilized currently for land management is decades old. This has been in works for several years. We literally put our constituents and our developers through the game of chutes and ladders when it comes to building and permitting and developing in Baltimore County, sending them up, down, and across the road. We have a lot of manual and paper process. So as you can imagine, as we had to shut down the county office building, what that has done to the permitting, inspections, and building process itself. We are beginning this. Phase 1 is starting immediately, and this is for phase 2 next year. Broadband fiber, sustaining engineering. We continue to build out to our Baltimore County Public Schools. Each and every school that joins the Baltimore County Optical Network, we are the carrier for the schools. That revenue no longer goes to Comcast or Verizon. It comes directly back to the county. Plus, we also benefit from E-rate for continuing adding schools. The county has saved $3 to $4 million a year in just cost for moving over to this optical network. Plus, last year and projecting to this year, we have about a $2.5 million revenue from this as well. That does not include E-rate funds going back to the schools. Content management and workflow, development engineering. The demand has been extremely high for each and every agency for moving manual processes into an automated workflow system. So that money will be highly utilized in that area. The DPW solid waste compliance and inspections. This is phase 3 of our asset management system. We are implementing a new asset management system to make sure that we have the sustainability of all county assets. This phase will make sure that our, especially the equipment at our landfills, are going through their routine inspections. This is multi-million-dollar equipment that requires annual maintenance, and when not done correctly or overseen correctly, it can cost the county between $500,000 and $1 million in repairs, and we saw that several years ago, unfortunately. Mainframe migration initiatives, again, this is to hopefully get us off the mainframe in the next 1 to 2 years. Again, we're spending $750,000 for this piece of equipment, and the technology and the resources are waning. And the final piece is a new scheduling application for our library system. This is for all their volunteers and employees to be into one system. Currently, they have 19 different systems that they are using for each one of the branches to manage their staff and employees. And then we always hold a $500,000 contingency for fly-ins. And as you can imagine, during this COVID, we had a large amount of fly-ins and requests from all of our agencies as everyone needed to work from home and things changed. And in the last 6 weeks, we spent about $900,000 in unplanned technology. Questions?
Members have any comments for Mr. O'Connor?
Yes, I do.
Councilman Catch?
Yeah, hi, Rob. Thank you for the job that you're doing. I know that since the COVID-19 pandemic, you've been under a lot of stress and doing a very good job. On the chart where it says broadband fiber sustaining engineering, is there a way for the county to connect private homes to our county network and have the county make money?
That's been discussed many times. I'm sorry, there's been several models where people have tried to do that, and what the BTOP program was built out to be and what the county is working with through state grants and with carriers is to be that middle mile, not the last mile, not being the delivery of triple play services directly to the home. Working with the carriers to get into unserved and underserved areas where they don't want to build out that middle mile because of the cost that it is, I guess, negative to them on an ROI standpoint. That's why we've been meeting with you, and that's why we're also applying for a very large state grant this September to help build out and connect hopefully nearly 500 to 1,000 additional homes above the ERDL. But we have not entertained, and I don't think it is advantageous for the county to get into that last mile bit of service.
With this COVID-19 pandemic, I mean, you can imagine the number of calls that we get from constituents whose children are either Hereford Middle, Hereford High, and they don't have internet. It's making life very difficult for them. Yeah.
So what we did was immediately out of the gate, we built external Wi-Fi on 11 of our branches, including Hereford library branches, and we're working on the other 8 right now, which was buying time as BCPS started to build out its external Wi-Fi. They are projected to complete all high schools by the end of this week, middle schools by the end of May, and working on elementary schools through the beginning of the summer, so that all 165 or plus schools will have external Wi-Fi capability as well. And we also built out 4 mobile hotspots out of our bookmobile since they weren't being used either. They've been used at testing sites and other various locations. We do understand the need, and we have tried to close the gap as quick as possible.
So it appears that, I mean, it's obvious that not everyone's going to be served. Hopefully our schools will open in the fall. So that means that students whose assignments are on the computer would go to the high school and sit outside in a car and do their work, or the library and sit outside. What time? How long will this service be? 24 hours a day?
Yes, I mean, Wi-Fi has the backbone and the capability to serve many, at each
Right.
location, and obviously it would be on 24/7. The schools and also the county are working together and looking at various solutions besides just this. This was honestly a Band-Aid right now. There are programs out there like Internet Essentials. We are looking at the grant opportunity to build out further. Working with companies like Comcast, who has hotspots throughout the county, even in rural spots above the Erdl. And so it's a multitude of things I think that will solve the problem, but it's not going to be one simple solution.
I see. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Any other members have any questions or comments?
Madam Chair, Izzy, I have comments for Mr. Blades.
We're still on IT.
Okay.
When Rob's gone, we'll go back. Okay.
Gotcha.
Okay. Any more questions or comments for OIT? Wow, Rob.
Just a comment.
That must have been the easiest one ever for you.
Madam Chair, I just want to tell Mr. O'Connor that was a terrific presentation on commenting on the auditor's comments. It was clear and made easy sense for me at least, and I think for my colleagues as well.
Thank you. Did you want me to address question 9 before I sign off, or are there any questions on number 9 for the increase in the 311 budget?
Is there any questions on that? Looks like you're in the clear, Rob.
All right. No, he's not.
Oh, okay.
Sorry, Rob. I just could not unmute fast enough. So I didn't realize we were going to get to 311 with Mr. O'Connor joining us. So I'll preface my question with the remark that several of my colleagues on the council were not very supportive of the whole 311 system. They thought it was a bit anachronistic and redundant to the quad zeros number that we already had. So could you or Mr. Blades answer the question as to did the 311 system require additional hires, or because, and I'll say that I've been told that 887 all zeros, instead of porting 311 to those people, some of them have been in those positions answering those questions from constituents for a long time, that number, the 311 number, was not ported to 4 zeros, and we actually hired additional people to basically provide the same service. And I'm just wondering if that's dollars well spent moving forward.
I can take the first piece of this, Ed, and then you can follow in. So the calls that were going to quad zero, the constituents were, on average, when we first started measuring, they were bounced around. In other words, they were forwarded 5 to 6 different times until they found the right landing spot. So not only was it frustrating for the constituents, it was also time consuming on each of the agencies as they were moving these calls around. The individuals who are manning these phones are typically subject matter experts in each agency and have other job duties that they perform. This is only part of their job to answer the phone. And quad zero was not even getting anywhere near the call volume that 311 was getting, even when it didn't exist. People, I think, by nature are assuming that 311 is something that a county has and is running. And when they pick up the phone for non-emergency, they are dialing 311. The state even basically had put out, and the city has put out, different flyers on what 211, 311, 411, and 911 do typically in each county. That being said, we went live on April 1st, and we're taking over 200 calls a day. And that's in a time where even calls for service in 911 are greatly down because people are not out and about. One of the major advantages that we found, but not only moving calls away from code enforcement and other agencies that we've worked with, we were quickly able to identify in an emergency operations call that there was a flood of calls coming into our health department for COVID-related issues. And the people that were manning the phones in the health department were nurses. The majority of the calls that were coming in were questions around food distribution and non-emergency type or complex, type of questions that nurses would need to answer. We were able to move around 60 to 70% of those calls over to 311 with a tight collaboration between Della Leister and Joe Cosentini from Della from the health department and Joe in 311, so that these calls were moved away from the nurses and they could focus on it. And as Della said today, their call times have now increased. The numbers are way down, but they're able to spend time on the phone with the individuals who have specific health questions around COVID itself, instead of where is a food pickup location, where are testing locations, which our 311 center can easily handle for them. So as for the positions, yes, we have 8 temps now working in there. We're looking to convert them to full-time positions. The salary range for those positions are below what a 911 call takers would be and well below what the subject matter experts are being paid in each of the other agencies that are answering these phone calls. So to transfer those positions over to 311 center didn't make fiscal sense. And these people have knowledge and experience within their agencies that could be better used than answering a phone call and reading a fact sheet or creating a ticket to be submitted into a work process.
Okay, well, I mean, to respond to your answer on the first question, to me, it just strikes me as the number is the number. Now, if it's 887 quad zeros or 311, and 311 is the more popular use because it's more of a national standard, to me, I mean, it's okay. Let's change the number. As far as the second question goes, it just strikes me as a matter of appropriate training and not necessarily the need to create another agency. So, I don't know how my colleagues feel about the evolution of 311. I just know that we had delayed and thank you to the auditors for verifying my recall of this, but we delayed the implementation of that. We weren't all that hip to it. But now it seems like we're developing sort of redundant agency where we have very experienced people, and if they're subject matter experts in their own department, they're certainly capable of learning where to route a call that comes in for another agency. And again, these are very experienced people, most of them, very experienced people, have been around the county for a long time. So I just have to process whether this is the best investment that we could be making at this time.
And we're taking a lot higher call volume in 311 than we were taking directly through Quad Zero. And so
I get, Rob, I get that. I mean, I understand that, again, because it's the most popular number and everybody knows about it, whether we had it or not.
And COVID.
So right. And so get rid of the Quad Zero and have 311 be the information center.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what we're
existing resources. That's all I'm saying.
Yes, sir. And that's what we're working to do throughout as we discuss and we meet with each and every agency. Because it's not just moving the phone call over, it's making sure that the processes are built so that each constituent that's calling in doesn't fall out or fall through a crack somewhere, that there is a transparency and a tracking mechanism, which we don't have in place, and we didn't have in place with each of the agencies. And that was a concern of the administration, is making sure that as a constituent calls into the county, not only are we noting the request, but we are also tracking and completing the request and informing the constituent in a timely manner that has been completed. And that's where we were falling short prior as well.
So, and if I could just chime in real quick, I think in time we're going to see a shift of these positions. It was really difficult with the setup to say you and you are going to go to 311 because only a small portion of their FTE, a portion of their time was dedicated to answering phone calls, not all of their time. So we have to work through the shifting of current workloads that would free up positions or reduce positions. So it'll evolve over time.
Okay. Rob, do you feel like you should have signed off earlier?
No, I got thick skin. Been here a long time. I got really thick skin.
I know. Okay.
Well, Rob, I would also like to add that if you're looking for a tracking system, I worked with IT back in 2010 to create a wonderful tracking system that I use every single day. That's how I know how many issues have come through my office. And I know that the county executive's office had used one at one time. I don't know if they still do. And it makes sure that nobody falls through the cracks. So you might want to take a look at the one that we set up for the county council to see if that's helpful.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
And Rob, if I could end on a more positive note, I do appreciate the improvements that have been made to my neighborhood over the years. I think it was rather groundbreaking when it was first put out, but it's evolved into a more useful tool where as long as you want to play with it and overcome a little bit of a learning curve, because it basically software as a service, you can look up permits for a particular property, you can access code enforcement violations for a particular property, and it's just a really, really useful tool for not only my office but citizens in general. So kudos to your department for continual improvement on what I think is a very valuable tool for all of us.
Much appreciated. Thank you.
Okay, any more questions for Rob? Okay, Rob, thank you so much, and tell your folks thank you on behalf of the county council.
Stay healthy. Thank you.
Ed, can I go back to something, please, before we move on?
Yes, ma'am.
I was grateful that David Marks mentioned the Nottingham Middle School. It's in the 6th district, but it's going to be serving both the 5th and the 6th district, and it's going to take a tremendous weight off of Perry Hall Middle School once built. You were talking about the state money, so I guess I'm just curious, and what projects will still be moving forward if the state funding isn't as large as what you think it's going to be? Like engineering, and what county money is there for these projects?
The county money is in place. The state money, at this point, I have not seen anything. So far from the IAC on our traditional school construction, I've seen funding for Berkshire, Colgate, and Chadwick. So those are the ones that you'll recall we previously said those were the last 3 that we're going to forward fund. So where we didn't have to forward fund any of those monies. So, and that's where we drew the line. So it really depends on what happens with Built to Learn as far as what we can move forward with in FY21.
Okay, it's just disheartening, I think that, and David, you can correct me, it was 2 budgets ago. It was 2 budgets ago when these schools were announced for first the elementary school on Ridge and Gum Spring and the Nottingham site. So we're waiting 2 years in and still funding not there. So, and Perry Hall Middle School needs the relief ASAP. And as we have Greenlee being developed now, I mean, it's just critical that the funding come through for these schools.
We completely agree.
Yeah, David, did you?
And I've, the big shame here is that the Senate did not pass the Build to Learn last year. These would be under construction. But the problem is the voters don't understand this necessarily. And, Ed, to whatever extent we can do using that county funding to get these projects advanced, please do it, because we're now halfway into this term and something should be moving forward. And I'll also point out that Councilwoman Bevins and I did not have any school projects under construction this year, nothing. And people were getting impatient, and rightfully so.
We certainly understand your frustration, and we're frustrated as well. So we do want to move forward with these projects.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Izzy, I believe Councilmember Toka, you had a question for Mr. Blaze before we move on?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. I had 3 questions. One, while we're on schools, I'll just ask. I had 2 schools, Summit Park in Bedford scheduled. I think we funded it last year, and just want to make sure that those funds are still in place, even though I know that they are tied to the Built to Learn Act.
Yes, that funding is still in place.
Okay, thank you. The other question I had related, you mentioned COVID retrofits, and I was trying to imagine what that is. And something that came to mind was perhaps a automatically opening door so that you don't touch it to open the door. Is that what you mean by a COVID retrofit?
Well, I'm thinking more along the lines, if you could imagine downstairs in taxpayer services,
Yes.
where we have that long counter.
Yes.
Those workspaces are not 6 feet apart. There is no glass in front of the tellers there. So we're talking about adjusting those types of areas as people come in to pay their taxes and other things, or people go to Drumcastle for HSS, those sorts of things.
I was thinking, if we're able to install doors that open automatically, it reduces the amount of touching that goes on, the amount of cleaning. Just something to think about. Maybe there's some federal funds related to that. I don't know. I'm speaking off the cuff. And the last question I have is a financing technique, and I wonder if it's being considered. And that is because the interest rates are so low right now, is there any thought about refinancing old debt?
We have looked at that, and there are restrictions on our ability to refinance that debt. It has to be callable at the time when we refi, and right at this moment, as of today, we don't have anything that's callable. And then you have to get in. There are other options that we would have to issue taxable debt. So we've looked at it. If we can find a way to do it where it's advantageous to us, we will definitely go down that path.
I thought it's a way to bring the debt service percentage down and then allocate that to backfill other.
It would be wonderful. It would be great if it was the same as refinancing your house, but it's not. There are other rules that apply, so
Gotcha.
It's just not as easy.
Okay, thank you. That's all I had, Madam Chair. You're still on mute, Madam Chair.
Councilman Quirk, you have a question?
Thank you. Yeah, question for Mr. Blades. I know there was an additional $6 million for the Wilkins Police Precinct replacement. Do you have any ETA or quick update on that?
For Wilkins, the $2 million is a state bond bill, and I know that property management is working with the police department. There are some operational issues or logistics they need to figure out. That is a small site, so we have to figure out, well, do we lease space and rebuild on the Wilkins site, or do we find another site and build a new police station there? So there are some logistics that have to be worked out, and that's kind of where we are in a feasibility point in the project.
Has all the resources been secured for it, or do we still need to lock in more capital later? I don't remember the total cost of it.
The capital budget in FY22 has additional funds for the project. It has another $6 million programmed in FY22 for the construction.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate it.
Sure.
Thank you, Councilman Quirk. Are there any more questions for Mr. Blades? Okay, Mr. Blades, where are we going next? Are we done with you?
The last question is regarding sustainability projects, and we'd like to turn that over to Steve Walsh and Steve Lafferty.
Okay, thank you. Hi, Steve and Steve.
Madam Chair.
Madam Chair, Steve Walsh here. How are you?
Oh, I'm going to miss that face.
Real quick, I'll just give a couple brief highlights on these sustainability projects identified on number 10. County Executive wanted to really focus on sustainability, and there's a lot of items in the strategic plan identified related to sustainability. And this line item in the budget actually puts funding behind some important activities that have been discussed this past year, and frankly, for many years prior. And they relate to a couple different things. One is the identification of our drainage infrastructure. We have identified basically the creation of a GIS layer of all our storm drains. We've gotten it to a certain point, and part of this funding goes towards finishing that storm drain layer so we know where things are. Some of you may recall the big storm a couple years ago in Catonsville where, after these big storms, people want to know what's going on. And a lot of the older parts of the county, we don't have any records of where storm drain infrastructure is or drainage infrastructure. So that's one effort that's going to be, this funding is going to be used for. Another parts of this funding is for floodplain mapping activities. We've identified some holes in the mapping that's out there. Basically, FEMA mapping goes to a certain drainage area, and then below that drainage area, there's basically floodplains that are not mapped. So folks out there buying houses don't really know that little babbling brook not too far from their house becomes a raging river when you have these big storms. So part of this funding is going towards mapping of those smaller drainage area floodplains. And
Sounds
then, yeah, and then basically other planning activities, climate action plan, and Steve can on that. But bottom line is this funding in this line item is really county executives' way to focus on some of these activities, which we all know are not going away, right? These storms are bigger, more frequent, and we really need to be in a position to identify the hazards, identify the risks, so policy decisions can be made about what projects are done, what projects are not done, how land and use is affected by these risks. And this budget year and this budget item, the renaming of 204P007 to resiliency and sustainability goes a long way towards achieving those objectives. So Steve, anything you want to add?
Steve, thank you. We've been working on putting together a two-prong approach on a climate action plan, and part of the resiliency funds are important for funding that because it'll set the stage for how the county is going to address its own assets going forward. The county executive decided that we should start with our own operations and assets and determine what the impacts of climate change will be on these resources so that we can protect county assets first and also get a good handle for then staging subsequent community-wide projects. And so without the baseline that this first stage will create, we're not going to be able to identify other projects that may need to be addressed. For instance, if there are roads that get flooded out so that people cannot get out safely, or if there's a police or fire station that could be damaged in severe weather events, and we need to protect those. We need to make sure that the assets the county has are in fact available at the time and over time. And our horizon for this is really 3 decades, because we know that the change in climate is going to affect sea levels, going to affect temperatures, going to affect really the way the whole weather patterns are over a period of time. And we're working also looking at localized flooding issues, as Steve mentioned, that obviously are a factor throughout the county.
Thank you, Mr. Lafferty. I believe Councilman Marks had a question for Mr. Walsh.
Thank you very much. I'm just going to be very blunt here. Wade Catch and I voted for the sustainability position. Todd Crandall voted against it. I look at these proposals and I see nothing but studies. I have people living on the Herring Run who continue to have flooding. 2 homes were not budgeted to be purchased, as I strongly recommended. That flooding impacts Councilwoman Bevan's district as well. We are in tough times, and yet we are being asked to vote for a budget that has study after study after study, planning after planning after planning. And what are our constituents going to see as a result of this? I know you have to do long-term planning, but it's a budget that just is, it seems nothing but planning. And I just, I'm just being very respectful here because I did vote for this position and I think it's an important area, but 3.7 million of studies and our constituents aren't going to see a lot of the things they want. I mean, the people along the Herring Run desperately need those properties purchased. And I just need to say that.
Thank you, Councilman. Is anyone going to respond to that?
I'll follow on, Chairwoman. Yeah, and David is right. I proposed the cut to not create this agency last year. And I do have to agree with Councilman Marks in that there are longstanding issues, flooding issues specifically, in my district, in Councilwoman Bevan's district, in Councilman Marks' district, and a neighborhood that they share. Solutions have been identified. So I'm not quite sure why consultants need to be hired, why we need to fund studies where the plans have already been discussed on how to take care of these issues. And I do have to agree with Councilman Marks that for some reason we've gotten into this let's study it mode. For instance, there's a capital this does not have anything to do with Mr. Lafferty's agency, but there's in my own district, there is a parking lot expansion study. I'm not sure why we have to study that and fund a study. It's a parking lot. So it can either go a certain way or it can't. And I understand there's more detail to it, especially with stormwater runoff and environmental concerns over a project like that. But I'm just having trouble, as Councilman Marks is, with justifying in the time, especially with the timing and the economy that we're in right now, that we're gonna study where solutions are evident and some things simply don't have to be studied. They just need to be accomplished. So I'll leave it at that. And if Mr. Lafferty, Mr. Blades wants to respond, that's fine. But I think we're heavy on overthinking and less on action.
Councilman Crandall, if I may, when it comes to the parking lots, I probably worded it inappropriately. I would not consider it a study. It's more of how do we get the additional spaces, because we agree that there's a need, but we just did not have the money to do full construction, more or less how we're going to get it done. As far as the sustainability, I don't think that, and I don't know for certain, and I have to leave it to Steve on this. I don't think any of these things existed in the past. So I think we have to start with creating the study. But I'll defer to Steve as the expert in that area.
Well, and Councilman, I was going to say something similar. We don't have a baseline to work from because these analyses were never done. We have some information, and I'll look. I don't know the specifics of to which you refer regarding studies or solutions identified in your district, but I'll certainly, follow up on those and see what we can move on and where they may stand in the queue. As the Councilman Marks comments about the Herring Run, we're looking at this issue of floodplains and whether or not we should change the standards by which purchases are offered. We know that there are some properties that are at the fringe of the floodplains and otherwise have not qualified. And we need to examine, and Councilman, you're well aware of this analysis that was done previously and part of the solution that was offered with the study through McCormick Taylor that the county felt was just too expensive at the time, and that's what led to the other purchases. So we're trying to look at the floodplain issue, and I think, as Steve Walsh said, part of the analysis has been missing over time. And the unfortunate thing is we're now sort of trying to make up for lost time, and having adequate data is going to be critical to deciding where the priorities are.
And if I could just add to Councilman Marks, I know, the county still has a budget item for acquisition of flooded homes. So, when we identify those as they bubble up, we evaluate them to see whether they qualify into the current criteria, and we move for those. I don't know which ones you're talking about, whether we have looked at those properties specifically, and we can follow up with you on those. But I think there's a little bit of money still left in that account, so we may be able to move forward with something on those particular Herring Run properties.
If I could jump in, Councilwoman Bevins, and look, you do a lot of good work, and all of you do. But it's the two homes on Worthington that Senator Chris West, Delegate Kathy Forbes, and I all recommend to be purchased. We talked about a drainage basin there that would collect the water. That would be much cheaper than expensive removal of trees and re-engineering the Herring Run. And it would help with the 6th district as well, because all that will flow downriver. Anyway, those are the two properties that we recommend. So thank you.
And those are the two properties. Go ahead, Steve.
This is Ed. Council, I just want to point out that in the previous question, we were talking about, I'm getting off talking about just briefly, we were talking about general fund liquidation. On that list of the 43 million I previously talked about, 300,000 of that is general funds available in acquisition of flooded homes. So make it a very difficult decision in liquidating.
I know. Okay, thank you.
And just to clarify, I'm not sure you saw the discussion about that, but those homes did not qualify under the current floodplain purchase criteria. So again, like Steve said, the discussion is, and really the heart of the policy debate is, how far do you go? You got to draw a line somewhere to purchase them. I mean, if you want to relax that line, you could be potentially buying a lot more homes. So that's the interesting part of the policy debate on what homes you buy and what homes you don't buy. But I agree. I think
it's very important, and more important than more planning. That's all. I'm done.
Okay. I would like to make a comment. And Mr. Lafferty, I think you'll find this interesting. The Towson Alliance they actually put in over half a dozen issues in for CZMP in my district along Herring Run, in really populated areas of Parkville and Overley. And for me to put the NC, the Neighborhood Commons, if you're familiar with that type of zoning, it preserves the land. There can be no development there. And it was asked for several reasons: to protect what's already there and to make sure nothing else gets developed, because there are such huge flooding issues. I know that Mr. Walsh is very familiar with what goes on in Glendale, Glenmont, and it all goes downstream. So I thought it was very, very interesting that the Department of Planning went against every single one of those neighborhood commons requests. Now, at the end of the day, thank goodness I get to make those decisions and have the last word on that zoning. But I can't understand when everyone knows how bad the Herring Run is and the issues that we have currently with the county and with flooding and the erosion, that the Department of Planning would go against Towson Green and Towson Alliance and myself, who support that. So I just thought it's interesting of what's really, really going on and how planning sees it. So no disrespect to planning, but I was very, very surprised that they went against the NC. Actually, they went against every single one of my neighborhood commons, but those 6 were particularly important to the community and to me. So I don't know if your study includes any of that area and how you feel about that.
Well, we're going to look at the potentially the riverine, which is what the Herring Run would be, and damage that could cause. Yes.
Mm-hmm. So you agree with putting the neighborhood commons on those areas to protect that and keep further?
Well, I don't know the specific areas, so I really couldn't comment on those.
Okay, maybe we could talk about that offline at another time.
Sure. Happy to. Please.
Good. Yeah. Are there any more questions or comments for Steve Walsh or Steve Lafferty?
Madam Chair.
Madam Chair.
I think Julian was first and then Izzy.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I did have a question. Steve, we certainly wish you well and thank you for your many years of service to the citizens of Baltimore County, and you will be sorely missed. My question is about, I see there's $1.5 million for refuge disposal projects at Texas and Hernwood landfills. And it has been my, number one, I'd like to know what type of disposal projects will happen at the Hernwood landfill, because it's been my understanding that that landfill has been closed and capped off for many years.
That is correct. So closed landfills are much like open landfills. They're highly regulated, and we need to continue to do monitoring and projects to make sure leachate is taken care of and things like that. So I could get you details, specific details about what's planned there. I know, ongoing site remediation, compliance with MD consent order, upgrading the leachate treatment facility. So when these landfills are capped, stuff still leaks out of them, and that leachate needs to be handled and actually taken somewhere. So the item has some, or the funding is for handling that leachate treatment facility. And once again, I can get you some more detail and specifics for that item.
Okay, thank you very much. I guess I was confused when I saw refuge disposal. I guess thought maybe you were doing something else.
No active trash going to those closed landfills. That's for sure.
All right, thank you, sir.
Thank you. Councilman Patoka?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. I didn't have this as an initial question, but now that we have the sustainability officer and Steve Walsh together and the landfill discussion, I was just wondering, are solar fields an appropriate use for closed landfills?
Yeah, yes, they are, Councilman. And in fact, the county put an RFP on the street to solicit bids to put solar on the closed landfill at Hernwood and at Parkton. And those bids have come back, and we're working through the process of deciding if we can award a contract to someone to install such panels.
Great. Steve Lafferty, is this your first budget hearing?
It is my first budget hearing this time around, yes.
This time around, okay. Well, let me just say that, as in creating this new position that the council approved last year, I'm delighted that you were selected for the position, because I always thought we needed someone. This is such an important issue that we needed someone that could hit the ground running and have instant respect across all county agencies. So I'm just really delighted that you were selected and now are part of the team in leading this effort of sustainability, which really is so important, because it will guide us if we exist as a county 30 to 50 years out for our children and our grandchildren. And I understand the need. I think I understand the need for studies in regard to sustainability, because the impact of development changes the flow and velocity of water. And so streams that may not have been raging rivers at one time now have become raging rivers, because we have changed the flow and velocity of the natural way water filters and where it goes. And so I do think that we need to take a hard look at this and make really tough decisions in terms of our sustainability. And a year ago, the council had the courage and fortitude to pass an impact fee bill, and I think it will help address issues like this, the flow and velocity of water and the impact development has on the rest of the county. So Steve, I've said this to you before, but I don't think I've said this to you, Steve Laffer. I said this to you personally, but I don't think I've said it to you publicly. I'm delighted that you're on. And Steve Walsh, I'm not going to leave you out. I wish you well, and I've enjoyed working with you over the past year and a half.
Very much.
Thank you,
have
Councilman.
one more meeting though at my budget hearing next week, so we'll talk then.
Okay, I believe Councilman Quirk was next.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just going to echo Steve Walsh's comments too on the sustainability projects. I think the 100-year flood zone for drainage areas, less than a square mile, and the modified storm drain condition assessments, those things are obviously very important. Stormwater, we've had 2 pretty significant floods in Oella, Catonsville, Old Ellicott City nearby. And it's certainly a big issue, so it'd be good to have more kind of a long-term plan on how we ultimately address it, because if we continue to see the types of rainfall that unfortunately we saw twice in just a few short years, you know, we got really significant issues. So that's something I definitely wanted to definitely speak in favor of. So it's a tough time. I mean, budgets are really tough. I mean, so how we allocate all these important priorities given the limited revenues could be tough. But I definitely think the long term, you know, we got to get our mind around this issue, and hopefully we don't see any more 1,000-year floods that seem to happen every couple years now. So we'll see what happens. But thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Quirk. Is there anyone else that has a question or comment for Mr. Walsh or Mr. Lafferty? I would like to close with saying to Steve Walsh, I know this is your last budget hearing with Baltimore County, so congratulations for one.
Next week you're going to see me again.
Oh, really? Oh, okay. Then I'll save it for then. And Mr. Lafferty, I know you've settled in over the last few months, and hope you're enjoying your time in Baltimore County. And we all look forward to working with you in the future.
Thank you, Councilwoman. I look forward to working with you as well.
Okay. Alrighty. So what do we have next? I don't know. Let's see. Mr. Blades, is that it? Let's see.
Madam Chair, that's it.
That is it. I'm like looking, and I'm thinking, okay, too bad. Well, I want to thank everybody.
Madam Chair,
What's that?
before you conclude, I have a question. And yesterday I asked Mr. Blades, or actually I asked Ms. Schenkel to respond to the analysis pandemic economy, as they've called it, proposed cuts. And every agency report that we get from our analysts separate out normal economy to pandemic economy. And I asked Ms. Schindel to respond to that, maybe unfairly so. And Mr. Blades said that this really, I'll paraphrase, Ed, what you said, which was the timing's not right for this. This isn't really appropriate. And maybe it wasn't appropriate because we were talking about one specific agency. And if you read those auditors' reports, as we all have, each of those pandemic economy, if I'm not mistaken, each one of those pandemic economy comments involve personnel changes, hiring freezes, salary freezes, no raises, and some mentions of furloughs. So, which is a word I don't think that any of us really want to use, and we would try to do everything that we could as Baltimore County overall to not go down that road. And I think we'd all be in agreement on that. So my question, I'll go back to what Councilman Marks said 2 hours ago, which is we're 8 days away from deliberations and votes on this budget. So my question is, given the $192 million gap between the two, between our analysts and your projections or your department's projections in terms of revenue projections, when is the right time for these discussions? Because we're 8 days away from doing our responsibility, and I just feel like we're not there yet on the administration coming to grips with that maybe the numbers weren't right as you all were formulating them, because it was early in the COVID process. We're looking at, we don't know what Build to Learn is going to eventually be. We don't know what the Fed help is going to be. I know that's all kind of a mystery, and in talking with some of my colleagues, we would rather be prepared for not getting either the amount of help that we need or the help at all. So I go back to my question and stop there, is when is the timing appropriate? Because we're, as David said, we're on the clock here, and we need to know if there are renegotiations with the unions. Are the unions at the table in maybe playing a role with helping us on this? And what ultimately is the administration, I'm not putting you on the spot today to answer this, but what is the administration's stance on this this gap in projected revenues from our analysts and your agency? And I just will throw a caution out there. I mean, Councilman Quirk sounded the alarm not too long ago, and then in our own budget briefing, our deputy auditor said, "Listen, we painted you a really bad picture, but it may not be bad enough," and that brings us all concerned, especially as we approach a date where some really tough decisions are going to have to be made. So I've asked my question twice. I won't ask it a third time.
Well, it's more than,
I'll leave it to you to respond.
It's a very fair question. I think that by early next week, we'll be ready to have conversations. Yesterday, the reason I chimed in with Ms. Schindel on the pandemic questions with property management, I think if we're going to do those broad types of conversations of, delayed hirings, no COLA, no increments in longevity, if we're going to have those conversations, the impact we should be talking about it countywide, not as an approach of one individual department of how does this affect you. I think those conversations occur at a higher level. So that's why I kind of inserted myself in that response. But I do think that early next week, we are going to get into those level of details. So we're getting there.
Okay. Well, and I do appreciate that, Ed, and everything that you've said has always come to fruition. So I'm not concerned about that. And I think you're right. I think in a specific agency hearing, it probably was not the best timing for my question, again, given that every analysis that we see has the same analysis, which really involves, as far as the pandemic economy goes, it has to do with personnel, which is a very, very sensitive topic, which I certainly understand. So thank you, and I'll look forward to seeing what you all come back with.
Thank you.
Okay, I'd like to thank everybody again for today, and we'll all be back again at 2 o'clock tomorrow for the Health Department. Take care, everybody.
Thank you.
Take care.